It's not as old as this date says it is.
I don't care what you say.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 Pawn Star items that turned out to be fake.
So it's not real?
Well, no, I'm going to send it off some more people. I'm going to try and get a consensus on this thing.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most interesting counterfeit items that were seen on Pawn Stars. Were you fooled by these? Let us know in the comments. Number 20, Colt Army Model 1860. A very popular revolver, the Colt Army Model 1860 was used extensively throughout the American Civil War. The US government purchased nearly 130,000 revolvers to be used in the war, and the gun was eventually discontinued in 1873. A man named Mike brought in one of these revolvers with its matching stock.
You got the rifle butt with it.
Yeah, it came with this.
It's unusual and it's rare. I mean, I've read about them, I've seen them in books. I've never really seen the rifle butt in person.
While he asked for $2,000, expert Craig Gottlieb claimed that the matching stock made it a collector's item worth $15,000. However, he was very quick to notice that the stock was stamped wrong. He also noticed that the revolver didn't fit inside, at least not as snugly as it should. The fake stock was completely worthless, but the gun was still purchased for $1,200.
So the stock's not worth anything?
No.
Number 19, Jimi Hendrix Poetry. Jimi Hendrix is one of the most famous musicians in American history, known primarily as a stellar guitarist and one of the defining figures of the 60s counterculture. A guest came into the shop with what he said was some poetry written by Hendrix. He claims to be a friend of the Hendrix family, having worked closely with a relative named Ricky.
I have some poetry here written by Jimi Hendrix.
So how'd you get this?
I started working with a relative of Jimi, Ricky Hendrix here. I spent a lot of money promoting these guys, and I became part of the family with them.
Of course, the handwriting expert immediately noticed some fakery. For one thing, the poem was written with a felt-tip pen, whereas Hendrix used a ballpoint. He also noticed that neither the handwriting nor the signature matched Hendrix's known works. Basically, this was a complete mess of a counterfeit that didn't fool the expert for a second.
I've seen a lot of different problems with it, and I can guarantee you that this is 100% not of them.
Number 18, Autographed Bears Football. Bob approached the Pawn Stars with an old autographed football. According to him, the football was signed by members of the 1967 Chicago Bears.
I got a 1967 autographed Chicago Bears football.
That year's Bears finished in second place in the Central Division and were coached by one of the founders of the NFL, George Halas. According to the expert, the value lies in the autograph of Halas and those of some popular players, including Dick Butkus, Gale Sayers, and Brian Piccolo. While some signatures were real, others were deduced to be clubhouse autographs. That is, autographs signed in the name and style of the athlete, but not by the athlete themselves. Because of this, the value plummeted from $10,000 to $1,000, and the seller refused to let it go when offered just $100 for it.
These are contrasting signatures and very typical for what you see in a clubhouse signature. They were signed by somebody else other than the athlete.
Number 17, Salvador Dalí Painting. Salvador Dalí is perhaps the biggest name in surrealism, with his work attracting attention for its strange and dreamlike visuals. A man named Mitchell brought a piece of what he claimed to be Dalí art into the shop, but it didn't even fool Rick. He immediately noticed the glitter and jewels that bedazzled the painting, and claimed that he had never seen anything like that in a Dalí.
I'll tell you what, it's different than any other Dali I've ever seen. I've never seen one with glitter, bedazzled.
However, he still called in an expert, and he said that Dalí was known to use glitter, just not in this case. The expert consulted a price book that includes all of Dalí's known works, and this particular piece was not inside. Yep, this wasn't even a counterfeit. It was just completely made up by someone painting in the style of Dalí.
You know, I don't know if it's good news or not, but I don't see it in here, and this is pretty all-encompassing. So the fact that it's not in here, I'd have to say that it's not a legitimate piece.
Number 16, Vintage Baby Rattle. These devices have been around for thousands of years, but not ones like this. This beautiful baby rattle is made of sterling silver and comes equipped with literal bells and whistles.
It's sterling silver, there's a whistle,
and some bells on it.
It even has a large pearl, which was supposedly used for teething. Owner Gregory posits that the fancy baby rattle dates from the early 1800s, but Rick puts it in the latter half of the century. Unfortunately, Rick found numerous problems with the silver upon closer inspection, leading him to deduce that it was nothing but a cheap reproduction. He passed on the rattle, asserting that it was virtually worthless.
Okay, well, here's my opinion of it. It's fake.
Number 15, a fake Picot. Many guests take the bad news well, but not this man. He came in with a bronze sculpture supposedly made by Émile Louis Picot. Picot was a prolific French sculptor who found great success in the late 1800s with his mythological works. This particular sculpture depicts Greek hero Perseus riding the flying horse Pegasus.
This is a statue called Pegasus, and this is Perseus. Perseus was the mythological figure that killed Medusa.
Owner Raphael was asking for $6,000, but Rick had his suspicions. He asserted that the piece was likely recast after Picot died in 1915. His suspicions were confirmed when he looked at the stamp, which clearly read "Made in USA." Unfortunately, this discovery set off the seller, and he angrily confronted Rick before storming out of the store.
I don't care what you say. I don't care what you tell me, but I know you're full of
You know, it's all right, Antoine, I got it.
Number 14, Wells Fargo belt buckles. Some fakeries are well done, others not so much. This man walked into the pawn shop with a series of belt buckles.
I have some Wells Fargo belt buckles made by Tiffany.
He believed that these buckles were made for Wells Fargo by prominent design house Tiffany & Co. Better known as Tiffany's, the luxury goods company was established back in 1837 and currently brings in billions of dollars every year. It's a name that everyone knows, especially Rick. He was quick to notice that the latch was soldered over the Tiffany's logo, which would never happen on an authentic piece of Tiffany's hardware. And just like that, the man's dreams were painfully dashed.
Tiffany would never make a belt buckle, then solder the little latch over their logo.
Number 13, Abraham Lincoln print. Owner Jeff hopes to get a lot of money for his print of Abraham Lincoln, owing solely to the fact that it's Abraham Lincoln.
I don't really know how much it's worth, but with it being Abraham Lincoln, there's a chance that it could be worth a lot of money, and that would be pretty exciting.
However, Rick is quick to dash his dreams with some Sherlock Holmesian deductions. He notices that Lincoln's signature is a deep and curious black when it should be more of a faded orange owing to its supposed age. He also observed how the A and L flowed together, whereas Lincoln's real signature did not do that. He deduces that the print is a forgery from known con artist Joseph Cozy. However, this particular print is a forgery of a forgery, with someone else copying Cozy's Lincoln autograph. Now, that's a fake for the ages.
What you have here is a copy of a forgery.
Number 12, Gibson mandolin. Most people associate Gibson with their famous guitars, but they actually make many musical instruments, including mandolins.
Yeah, it's a 1968 Gibson SG, mint condition.
A customer brought in one of these mandolins, which was painted in that signature Gibson orange and brown. Chumley showed great interest in the instrument and seemingly very quickly purchased it for $1,500, and he got in a lot of trouble for it. It was only after buying the instrument that he showed it off to a professional, who immediately noticed some major red flags. Worst of all, it wasn't even a good forgery. It not only used the wrong font in Gibson, but the mandolin was finished with plastic rather than lacquer. As the pro puts it so succinctly,
"This is fake as hell, man."
Number 11, Stradivarius violin. Built in the 16 to 1700s by the Stradivari family, Stradivarius violins are incredibly valuable. However, this is a case of name brand recognition overshadowing actual quality. Numerous blind tests have shown no discernible sound difference in Stradivarius violins, despite many arguing that the sound is recognizable and unique. The ancient and time-worn violin seen in this episode could have gone for hundreds of thousands of dollars, if it were real. Aquiles Figueroa of Stradivari House of Phoenix was brought in to assess the violin and noticed some errors in the varnishing and design. Figueroa claims that reproductions of Stradivarius violins were mass-produced throughout the early 20th century, and that this violin is one of millions.
They would mass produce these in the millions.
Do you think it has any value to it?
In its current shape, not a lot.
Number 10, John Lennon artwork.
The John Lennon. Come with me.
Aside from being one of the greatest songwriters in music history, John Lennon was also an accomplished artist. His artwork is universally recognized, especially the self-portrait doodles.
He did these doodles and things like that, and in the 70s, he realized people would pay him money for it. Then he started doing the really large ones. I mean, he did full, portrait-size ones. And almost all the art I've ever seen from him is like this.
A man came into the shop bearing some supposedly original John Lennon doodles, which the owner claims to have picked up at a thrift store of all places. There's a reason it was sitting in a thrift store and not in someone's personal collection. The owner believed it was worth $20,000, but when Rick flipped the paper over, he saw a Kodak paper watermark. As Lennon passed away in 1980, long before this computer paper was readily available, he easily declared it a fake, and the owner walked away with nothing.
So, it's cool, but it's 100% fake.
Glad I didn't pay much for it.
Number 9, Shoeless Joe Jackson book.
Do you know how rare it is to find his signature?
No, not at all.
It's the rarest sports signature, period.
Wow.
One of the most divisive and controversial baseball players of all time, Shoeless Joe was an exceptional player. However, his legacy was tainted after the 1919 World Series, which saw players of the Chicago White Sox intentionally throwing the games for money. A customer on Pawn Stars arrived with an old book titled Say It Ain't So Joe that was allegedly signed by Jackson.
But Joe Jackson's signature is so rare and so expensive, I just have to take the gamble before this guy walks out the door with it.
According to Rick, Jackson's signature is the rarest in sports, and the owner even had it certified. Rick ended up paying $13,000 for nothing. He had it looked at by various experts, all of whom deduced that the signature was fake.
Several factors became apparent during our thorough examination that prevented us from certifying the autographs, which means it's fake. The entire small case E in Joe's first name has been erased and signed over the original.
The title of that book has a certain irony to it. Number 8, Napoleon Letter. That wouldn't be the last time that the Pawn Stars were fooled. In season 8, a man walked in with a letter that was allegedly written by Napoleon Bonaparte. The item contained many authentic aspects, including the period-specific wax seal and a certificate of authenticity.
Okay, it seems like it's from a pretty legit company. What do you want for it? And don't be crazy, man. I mean, I gotta make money here too.
Okay.
Corey ended up paying a surprisingly small $2,000 for the letter, but even that was too much.
$2,000?
$2,000.
All right, sweet, man. I'll meet you right over there.
Thank you.
Rick had Corey go to an expert, who was quick to judge the letter a replica. His primary concern was the ink, which was neither smudged nor faded.
We would see where there are blobs of ink, and we'd see that the ink would have faded in color. Can't say that this is worth very much as a historical artifact.
Well, there goes $2,000 down the drain.
Corey tried selling it in the shop for $20, but even that proved a failure, as Rick prevented him from selling a fake item.
We don't sell fake stuff here. Sometimes Corey's ego gets the best of him, but it's a lesson he's gonna have to learn.
Number 7, prison memorabilia. A tough-looking man with a handlebar mustache showed up with a suitably tough item, a Wells Fargo strong box, an antique ball and chain, and some handcuffs.
I'm looking to get around $2,000 for everything. The least I would take is probably around $18,000.
The ball and chain allegedly came from Yuma Territorial Prison, which opened in 1876, and the handcuffs from California's Folsom State. However, Rick was very quick to point out some historical discrepancies. The old handcuffs from Folsom had electrically welded chains, which proved anachronistic. And despite Rick claiming that prisons never put their name on the ball and chains, the Yuma ball and chain had a clear Yuma stamped into the iron.
Okay, so what are you trying to say?
It's fake.
Even the strong box was fake, a fact that Rick regrettably learned after shelling out $450.
I thought it was fake to start with.
Well, then why didn't you say anything?
I didn't want to bust your bubble.
What, so you let me spend the money instead?
Now I can holler at you.
Number 6, Pete Rose baseball cards. Pete Rose is widely regarded as one of the best baseball players of all time. He's a 17-time All-Star, won 3 World Series, and currently still holds the MLB record with 4,256 hits. As one can imagine, his baseball cards are worth some good money.
Before I buy these, I gotta know that they're legit. And these things look like they're in great shape. Maybe a little too good a shape.
In season 2, a man tried selling 5 1967 rose cards. The fact that he had 5 proved a major red flag, and Rick instantly identified them as fakes.
How can you tell that? What do you mean?
Because the color's all faded, everything's a blur, even his face. It doesn't look silk-screened.
Various aspects of the card's physical design were totally off, including the faded colors and overexposed picture. It's amazing how quickly dreams of cash can be dashed.
If these cards are fake, then what else is real? Is the wife real? The dog? The cat? What's real?
Number 5. Babe Ruth signed bat and glove. Speaking of baseball, in the 5th season premiere, a man walked into the shop with a particularly special baseball bat and glove.
Babe Ruth, he's probably the most famous baseball player of all time.
The accomplishments that Babe Ruth made in his career, I mean, he outshines just about every baseball player since him.
The glove was signed by none other than Babe Ruth, and the bat co-signed by Ruth and Christy Mathewson, a dominant pitcher who played for the New York Giants. The owner was hoping to get $120,000 for the 2 items, an exorbitant cost that had Rick rightfully consulting expert advice.
Who is your guy and what makes him special?
Because I trust him and I know him, and I don't know you.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
The expert deduced that the authentication papers were fraudulently signed by a criminal who was caught in an FBI sting known as Operation Bullpen. 14 individuals from 5 states were convicted in the scam.
So what's the bottom line?
With all the circumstantial evidence, my gut tells me that this is unlikely genuine.
The signature isn't considered legitimate, and Rick walked away from the deal.
I don't know what to say.
At this point, I'm just gonna pass. I'm sorry I can't do nothing for you, man.
I can understand that.
Number 4. Titanic Newspaper. Pardon the pun, but an authentic newspaper reporting on the Titanic disaster would be a Titanic find.
For a 1912 newspaper, it's in perfect condition. I mean, perfect.
The Pawn Stars were certainly excited when a man tried selling a copy of the Boston Daily Globe with the tragic headline, "Titanic Sinks, 1,500 Die." However, Rick instantly took note of the impeccably white paper and pristine ink, major red flags, considering the paper had ostensibly been around for a century. He also noticed that the picture accompanying the story was from a copy machine.
You see right here? That's from a copy machine.
Okay. So when they copied it?
Probably right after the movie came out.
Oh, the resale?
Needless to say, the newspaper itself was fake. But fake or not, it's still a really interesting thing to have around the house.
I guess I'm just gonna go home and sulk in my own misery. Oh well.
Number 3, Monet painting.
Okay, where in the hell did you get this?
A founder of the French Impressionist movement, Oscar Claude Monet is one of the most famed artists of all time. His paintings, of course, go for big money, with his work, Le Bassin en Nymphéa, selling for $80 million in 2008. The owner of this particular supposed Monet painting was asking for $1 million. Nothing compared to his greatest works, but a sizable chunk of change nonetheless.
People have walked in my shop and I have bought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise off them. But a real Monet? That might be the most expensive item yet.
The painting was supposedly on exhibit at the Las Vegas Art Museum in 1997, and the art came with numerous pieces of documentation. An expert was brought in, and he noticed that the paint wasn't sweating through the canvas.
The brush strokes are there. It's very thin. Usually you'll get some sort of impasto, a little bit more texture. He usually had some texture in his pieces, and this, again, there's very little of that.
Regardless of its beauty, the painting was not a Monet original. Number 2, Lincoln family photo. As Rick says, you never know what's gonna come through those doors. In season 16, a man came through with what seemed like a huge catch. A photograph of Mary Todd and Abraham Lincoln dated from 1863.
So where'd you get this?
I bought it from a collector who sold me a collection of 11 photographs that were unidentified, and I painstakingly was able to identify every single one of them and did recognize it to be Abraham and Mary together.
And no documentation, anything like that?
Nothing at all.
If correct, the photo would have been taken during the Civil War while Lincoln was serving as the 16th President of the United States.
You have to look at everything in the photograph, from what they're wearing to what type of picture it is, to then what's happening with the face.
The owner asked $1 million for the photo, and while the expert called it a gorgeous picture, it was nevertheless a fake one. But that wasn't enough for the owner, who rudely claimed that the expert was discrediting herself by calling it a fake.
I know you think this is worth $1 million, and
No,
you would like it to be worth $1 million, and all I'm saying is it's my opinion that it's not Abraham Lincoln.
We think someone was just a little upset. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Baltic Amber. Now, we're not gem experts or anything, but something that's 40 to 50 million years old is bound to be worth a good chunk of change. That is, if the item in question is actually millions of years old.
Piece of Baltic amber with a tarantula. He's got some paperwork. It's a tarantula?
A man arrived at the pawn shop believing that he was in possession of some Baltic amber with an entombed tarantula.
Yeah, I sent it off to Berkeley and to the entomology department.
The owner had some sketchy paperwork supposedly proving that it was real amber, but the gemstone expert had it sent to the Gemological Institute of America at the personal cost of the owner, who paid $200 to have it sent out and appraised. Unfortunately, the amber was actually just plastic, and the owner was out $200. Now that's what we call getting ripped off at a pawn shop.
This sucks.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.